I wonder, have you ever been in love? I mean, really in love? The sort of lifetime commitment that begins with just a look. It's like someone switches a light on. And there it is. Laurel and Hardy live in the timeless, magical, black and white world of my childhood. And they're even hanging about here, in this room. Hard to believe they stopped making films before I was born. I first saw them when I was a boy in Calcutta, India. My parents' apartment was number 7 Charingi Road, that white building over there. Reruns of Stan and Ollie were played next door at the Metro Cinema. Ollie here was born Laurel Hardy in Harlem, Georgia, just west of Augusta. He was originally a singer, but he wanted to act, so he moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and the Lubin Film Studios, and then on to Hollywood, where he played character roles. 4,000 miles away in Lancashire, a stage-struck young man, Arthur Jefferson, joined the English comedy vaudeville troupe Fred Connor's Army, whose star name was Charlie Chaplin. Their stage show was such a huge success in England that they decided to tour America's lucrative vaudeville circuits. A year into his booking, Arthur Jefferson was now using his middle name Stan and had become Charlie Chaplin's understudy. The show was a hit, and only a few months into the run, the star, Charlie Chaplin, was signed by movie producer Max Sennett. Chaplin left for Hollywood, the show folded, and Arthur Jefferson was left high and dry in the United States. For the next 6 years, Stan toured America as, ironically, a Charlie Chaplin impersonator, and also as a double act. One of his performing partners, also his first wife May, thought Stan Jefferson was a bit clunky in name and suggested a new one inspired by the headgear of Roman emperors, Laurel. So in 1917, the newly minted Stan Laurel arrived in Los Angeles. He worked with a number of Hollywood producers and eventually signed with Hal Roach in 1926. He also made films for the legendary film producer Bronco Billy Anderson, and it was in one of these films, The Lucky Dog, that Stan and Ollie first worked together. Ollie was known to his friends and family by his nickname, Babe, because of his baby face, and by this time he'd over 150 films under his belt, mostly playing heavies like this. Even though Stan was technically very good, all that vaudeville experience paid off, he never found a consistent identity on screen.
I wasn't too successful as a comic. They told me my eyes were too blue to photograph. There was a kind excuse, you know, one of those things. And I didn't feel I was so hot myself, so I was very happy to get into some other end of the business.
So he decided to quit his acting career for a behind-the-scenes role as a writer and a gag man. Then a happy accident brought him back in front of the cameras, as we'll see in this Is Your Life.
Your good friend, director Leo McCarey.
Babe was cooking a leg of lamb, and for some reason, he left his arm in the oven too long or something. And he got it so badly blistered that we had to cut down his part in the next picture, so we decided to put Stan in the picture, too, to bolster up the comedy.
Yeah.
And so when we saw the two of them on the screen together, we decided there's a real team.
Laurel and Hardy appeared in 35 silent films between 1926 and 1929. But the next challenge to them, and the movie business in general, was just around the corner.
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet. Wait a minute, I tell you. You ain't heard nothing.
Many silent movie star careers ended when people heard their voices.
Just the same. You might write out a nice, clear copy of that song.
What for?
Joe Praviti doesn't read very well.
Stars with no stage or vocal experience disappeared. Laurel and Hardy's voices perfectly matched the characters they'd created in the silent era.
How is Mr. Kennedy, Mrs. Kennedy?
Oh, he's very well, thank you, Mr. Hardy.
Is Mr. Kennedy home, Mrs. Kennedy?
Not yet, Mr. Hardy. I must be going. Good night, Mr. Hardy.
Good night, Mrs. Kennedy. That was Mrs. Kennedy. Well, what's the matter?
I was wondering who it was.
By now, Stan was not only the star, but also the writer, editor, and director of their films. He didn't just accept the advent of sound motion pictures, he embraced it.
Just a minute, my friend Mr. Hardy will speak to you.
Hello?
He mixed slapstick routines with one-liners.
Excuse me, please. My ear is full of milk.
Even created one of the first movie catchphrases.
Here's another nice mess you've gotten me into.
What's a knick-knack?
Oh, a knick-knack's a thing that sits on top of a whatnot.
Huh.
And don't bother me.
His imaginative use of sound effects is outstanding.
Would you gentlemen please let me pass?
Why, certainly, ma'am. Why, just a moment.
This movie, The Music Box, won the 1932 Oscar for Best Comedy Short. It's about two men pushing a piano up some steps. Oh, spoiler alert. There's no piano in this box. It's empty. Remember, all these sounds were brilliantly added by Stan in the dubbing process. I don't want to dwell on their later careers. They left Hal Roach, but they discovered that even though he ripped them off by not paying them what they were worth, they lost total artistic control over what they were doing, which Stan valued very much. It was a struggle, but somehow they survived.
In the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, on the trail of the lonesome pine.
Though they were cinema gold, in private life they had a more difficult time. Stan had 5 wives, Babe had 3. Babe had health issues because of his weight. He hated being the fat one. Stan was a diabetic. They were both heavy smokers. Eventually, Babe died in 1956 at the age of 61, following a series of strokes. And after Babe died, Stan, who swore he'd never work with anybody else, continued to write sketches for the two of them. And he always had an open-door policy to younger comedians.
I was looking up something else, and it just said Stan Laurel. I thought, it can't be. And I called up, and it was Stan Laurel. We had just started doing the Dick Van Dyke Show, so he knew who I was. And I said what a fan I was, and I said, you know, I've stolen from you pretty liberal over there. And he said, yes, I know.
There's no chair there.
He was a taskmaster. And when I gave him the script to read, the bellboy, he scratched a couple of things. Don't shoot. Then below that, shoot this twice. And I listened to everything he wrote.
I'll miss us when we're gone. So will you.
They were funny, of course. That's why people went to see their films. But beneath it all, their movies are about innocence and friendship.
Why don't you put some ice in it? What is it now?
I don't like fresh.
I think I said at the start of this that they were part of my timeless, magical, black and white childhood world, and I know I'm not alone. I can't think of anybody with a sentimental bone in their body who doesn't love Laurel and Hardy.